My name is Milline, and I'm 38 years old. I married my husband, Kenneth, who is 4 years older than me, 8 years ago. My life took a dramatic turn when my beloved father passed away due to illness, leaving me with a substantial inheritance. I used this fortune to purchase a new house, which I adore. The scent of fresh wood brings me comfort. I often think that my father would be pleased to see this new home. Our old house, where my father lived alone after my marriage and my mother's passing, was just a 15-minute walk from our apartment. Following my father's fall a few years ago, he passed away recently. With the inheritance, I decided to demolish the old family home and build a new one. I've always believed that even though the old house is gone, the happy memories will remain in our hearts. Kenneth often echoed my father's words about building a new home as a way to start afresh. At first, I thought Kenneth was just trying to cheer me up, but it soon became clear that this wasn't the case. Kenneth, I need you to fill out the divorce papers and submit them to the appropriate place. Divorce papers? What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. Yes, exactly that. We're getting divorced. I want you to submit the divorce papers. This is not a joke. I never intended to live with you in this house. This new home, built with your father's inheritance, is meant for my mistress. She and I will be living here together. His words were astonishing. Mistress, you've been cheating on me. Yes, if I had met her before I met you, I wouldn't have married you. She's different, cute, kind, and genuinely loves me. We've been together for about 6 months. She approached me knowing I was married, but she didn't mind. She's happy just being with me and says the sweetest things. I should never have married someone as serious and uptight as you. Coming home to you was never enjoyable. He continued, I've decided to take this house as alimony. After 8 years of marriage without children, what benefit is there in staying married to you? I was overwhelmed and sought comfort from Kenneth, only to be met with unexpected blame. You're acting like a victim, but this is all your fault. If you had fulfilled your role, no one would stray. It's your responsibility that men are drawn to other women. You're to blame for the affair, the divorce, and losing the new house. It's wrong to play the victim or to resent me for this, he asserted. He claimed his infidelity was my fault and then handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked, puzzled. It's your alimony. I don't want any hassle later, so I'm giving it to you now. Be thankful. Inside the envelope was $1,000. As he took the new house, built with my father's inheritance, to live with his mistress, he tossed me the money. I calmly returned the envelope. Fine, I accept the divorce. If you don't love me, there's no point in staying married. I don't need the money. He seemed taken aback by how easily I accepted the divorce. Well, if you say so, just don't ask for it back later. Kenneth packed his things and left a few days later, taking the keys to the new house with him. However, shortly after, my now ex-husband frantically called me, clearly agitated. What did you do? The police came to the house, talking about warrants and charges of trespassing. What's going on? According to him, the police had arrived while he was with his mistress at the new house. Hello, we're the police. You understand why we're here, right? The police? What for? Well, this is your ex-wife's house. Entering with a stolen key is illegal, both theft and trespassing. You understand? Kenneth, shocked and bewildered, looked at his mistress, who was equally confused. What's going on? Isn't this your house? You said you wanted to show me. Be quiet and stay out of this. Sorry to interrupt your domestic dispute, but we have a warrant. Could we discuss this at the station? Caught between the police and his mistress, Kenneth called me in a panic. Why is this happening all of a sudden? What did you do? I haven't done much. I simply reported that my house keys were stolen and that strangers were in my home. It's only natural to call the police. I promptly filed the divorce papers, reverted to my maiden name, Milline Baker, and reported the situation to the police. This is my house. Didn't you agree to give it to us as alimony? Kenneth argued. I never agreed to that, I countered. It's convenient for you to twist things to fit your narrative. Are you joking? How can you think that house is yours? I'm the one on the house contract. I paid for it with my inheritance from my father. Plus, I own the land. But your father said it was for us, Kenneth protested. That was when you were my husband. Now we're divorced and strangers. Why would you think it's your land? My father had transferred the land rights to me when he fell ill to prevent any complications if something happened to him. He must have anticipated a situation like this. Maybe that's why he advised demolishing the old house and building a new one. Money can be taken easily, but a house, now that's different. Kenneth's calm demeanor suddenly made sense. So you were planning this all along? I did nothing. You misunderstood everything and left. It was almost amusing watching you walk away, clueless. Too bad you were about to be happy with your mistress. Stop being ridiculous. You blamed me for the affair, the divorce, and losing the house. How does it feel now, stuck between your girlfriend and the police? Kenneth could only groan in response. Hating me is misplaced. This situation is entirely your fault. Ever heard of you reap what you sow? This is what you deserve. As soon as I said this, Kenneth exploded in rage on the phone, shouting accusations. Then suddenly, his voice faded. Excuse me, are you Mr. Smith's ex-wife? He's causing a disturbance at your house. Could we have a word, please? It seemed a police officer had taken over the call. I explained the situation to the officer, who sympathetically acknowledged how tough it must have been. Later, Kenneth and his mistress were taken to the station. Kenneth continued to insist that the house was given to him by his ex-wife and that it wasn't trespassing. His mistress, genuinely surprised, stated that she had no knowledge of trespassing. Kenneth claimed he had evidence to support his case and presented it at the station. Ultimately, the mistress's statement was deemed credible, and she was released with a warning. Kenneth, however, was found guilty of theft and trespassing and was fined. The issue now was that Kenneth had named me as his guarantor upon his release, likely because he didn't want his strict parents to know. The officer, clearly exasperated, informed me of the situation. Why should I be his guarantor? We're divorced and strangers now, I replied firmly. I have no connection with Mr. Smith anymore, so I refuse. You say he has no one else to turn to, but his parents live nearby. Please contact them. The officer relayed this to Kenneth, who was evidently frustrated. His parents were already aware of our divorce due to his infidelity, but they were unaware of his attempt to take the new house. The police call had informed them of the entire situation. Reluctantly, I visited Kenneth's parents' house after they requested more details. I knocked on the door and apologized. I'm sorry I couldn't explain the situation earlier. No need to apologize, his mother replied. It's all my foolish son's fault. But did you know about this? No, about what? I asked. Well, my son is here with his mistress, a much younger woman. We let them in to talk, but I'm not sure what he's thinking. To my surprise, Kenneth had brought his mistress into the living room. The scene was as described: Kenneth, the young woman, and my stern-looking father-in-law, Tom. Tom, it's been a while. I'm sorry for the delay, I said. Milan, thanks for coming. I apologize for calling you after the divorce, but I've heard Kenneth's side of the story. However, I can't fully trust someone who's been arrested for trespassing. Can you tell me your side? I recounted everything as requested. Throughout my explanation, Kenneth and his mistress kept their heads bowed, avoiding eye contact. What were you thinking, trying to take Milan's new house? Are you insane? Kenneth's father demanded. It's not that simple, Kenneth interjected. We resolved this between us. Resolved? How is that possible? Tom retorted. Your story is completely different from hers. Apparently, Kenneth spun his own version before I arrived. What were you told? I asked. Kenneth's father said he claimed you willingly transferred the house to him, then changed your story and reported him, leading to his wrongful arrest. Really? He said that. I was incredulous. It's true that when we discussed the house, I didn't object. But that doesn't mean I agreed to transfer ownership. To suddenly claim the house as yours and report it, it's beyond comprehension. I'm so sorry, Milan, for having such a son, Kenneth's mother said. What are you saying, Mom? I'm telling the truth. Milan wasn't agreeing. She was too stunned to speak. How could you misunderstand and still claim to be her husband? I nodded in agreement with Tom. Despite everything, Kenneth continued to make excuses. Anyway, you never mentioned owning the land. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done this. If I had told you, you'd have found another excuse to do the same thing, I replied. How can you say that? Were you spending a lot on her? Kenneth asked, gesturing towards his mistress. No, why would you think that? I responded. Right after our divorce, I happened to run into one of your colleagues. When I mentioned the divorce, I received some shocking information that left me reeling. Figures, Kenneth's colleague said, looking uncomfortable. No offense, but I thought it might happen. What do you mean? Didn't he tell you? I asked. The colleague shifted uncomfortably before spilling everything. I should have mentioned this sooner, but I wasn't in a position to tell you. Kenneth has been bragging about his mistress, a woman 20 years younger. He was showing off, buying her expensive bags and jewelry. He said he didn't know how to contact you to inform you. He's been very open about his plans. The colleague continued. Kenneth even mentioned a decisive conversation he had. He said he was planning to divorce you to marry his mistress. Apparently, her father passed away and they're building a new house with the inheritance. Kenneth planned to claim the house in the divorce. He said, once the house is built, I'll divorce Milan and somehow claim it. No matter the opposition, I'll get it, and then my young new wife and I will live in the big house. Kenneth had been showering his mistress with gifts for some time, it seemed. The house built with my father's inheritance was intended as a grand gesture to propose to her. I've heard everything. Do you still insist you did nothing wrong? I asked, sweating with frustration. Kenneth stammered, well, yes, I bought her gifts. So what? I used my own money and gave Milan her living expenses. She's not my destined partner. This woman is. I brought her here today to announce our marriage. Are you out of your mind? His parents exclaimed in shock. The most surprising response came from the mistress. Marry you? Did I ever say that? We're not even dating. What do you mean? Kenneth asked, bewildered. Exactly that, she replied. I'm not in a relationship with him. I only approached him for a sugar daddy arrangement. I told you from the start that I was looking for someone for that kind of arrangement, and even married men were acceptable. You agreed to it initially, but now? What are you talking about? That's creepy, the mistress said. Kenneth went pale at this revelation, unable to speak. I asked, so why did you come here with him today? The mistress explained, I came to ask for more time to pay the alimony. I knew he was married, so it's an affair, and I'm prepared to pay the alimony. But I'm still a student. A student. How old are you? Tom, Kenneth's father, interjected, looking bewildered. I'm 22. I lost my parents early and have been doing sugar dating to pay for college. I sold all the gifts for living expenses, so I don't have savings. I can show you my bank account. I've just secured a job and can start paying alimony from my salary. So, you came here to ask me to wait for the alimony? I asked. Yes, that's right, she confirmed. Kenneth, who had been listening in silence, erupted in anger. Didn't you hear her? Unfortunately, she never intended to marry or even date you. But that's separate from the alimony you owe. And what about saying you wanted a house? The mistress responded, I meant I'd want a house someday when I marry. It wasn't about marrying you. What? Kenneth exclaimed. I was suddenly taken to that house, thinking it was yours. Then the police came, and I learned it was actually your wife's. She bowed deeply to me, indicating that all of this was due to Kenneth's misunderstandings. Kenneth stood dazed, clearly in shock. All right, I said, if you promise to pay the alimony properly, I'll wait for the payment. But promise me no more sugar dating. It might not end simply next time. I promise I'll never do it again, she said earnestly. I turned to Kenneth. Expect a claim for alimony from me without delay. Alimony? What are you talking about? Kenneth asked, taken aback and not expecting to pay alimony himself. You said you didn't need alimony when you returned the money, I reminded him. I gave you $1,000 and now you're asking for more? That's not what we agreed on, Kenneth protested. I don't recall any agreement, I said. You returned the $1,000 I gave you saying you didn't need it. What I meant was that I didn't need such a trivial amount for alimony. Do you have any idea how much alimony for infidelity is? It's $11,000, I replied, and you're also at fault for not having children in the 8 years we were married. At that moment, a loud slap echoed through the room. Someone asked, What are you doing, Kenneth? He held his cheek, clearly stunned by the impact. I asked, Are you serious? Do you really think her inability to have children is her fault? Enough with your jokes, Dad, Kenneth's father interrupted. Don't tell me you're blaming Milan for your affair too. Well, that's how it is, Kenneth said. I should have never married her. It's like fraud. How could you think that? I challenged. Your parents wanted grandchildren. If she couldn't get pregnant, they thought it was better to split up. That's why I chose her. If you truly believe that, Kenneth's father said, then we must have raised you wrong. It took your mother 10 years to conceive you. She was heartbroken hearing about others having children quickly and went through intense treatments until you were born. Did you think pregnancy is solely the woman's responsibility? Is that why you could cheat so easily? If you really cared about her, you wouldn't have done what you did. This isn't Maline's fault, Kenneth's father continued. It's all due to your thoughts and actions. I was learning this for the first time too. Kenneth's mother, Jane, had struggled for 10 years to have him. Tears streamed down her face as she silently listened. Carly, Tom said, leave this house now. Why? Kenneth asked, bewildered. You're a long-awaited son. I can't bear to look at you now, Tom said. Don't come back until you truly understand your mistakes. Where should I go? Kenneth asked. Back to our apartment. That apartment has already been canceled, I said. With the new house, there was no need to keep it. I canceled it right after reporting to the police. There's no place for you to return. Kenneth was shocked to realize he had nowhere to go. In frustration, he started blaming his mistress. It's your fault. All the money I spent, and now you say you never intended to marry me. It's fraud. She remained calm and replied, I was clear about it being a sugar relationship from the start. I never asked for money or gifts. If you want to sue me, go ahead, but I have proof of our arrangement. And don't forget the alimony, I said. Kenneth seemed flustered. Wait, please wait. I contacted his parents with her and then left their house. Later, I hired a lawyer and sent a demand letter for the alimony. I didn't send it to his parents' house, knowing he no longer lived there. Why is it being sent here? Kenneth's workplace receptionist asked as she looked at the letter. It's possible to send such documents to both residential and employment addresses, I explained. This is regarding the alimony. Is that what this is about? She asked, noticing Kenneth's pale face. You look so shaken. Didn't you inform him? I did, I confirmed. I just told the truth. No one asked me to keep quiet. It's his own doing. The arrival of the demand letter at Kenneth's workplace spread news about his actions, including his sugar dating and the subsequent loss of everything. Overcome with embarrassment, Kenneth couldn't handle the gossip and resigned, claiming he was leaving on his own terms. His troubles didn't end there. He sought free legal advice, claiming he was a victim of marriage fraud. The response was discouraging. We see cases like this, but with the evidence you provided, it's not considered fraud. You agreed that it was a sugar relationship from the start, the advisor said. If you developed feelings later, that was one-sided. We won't stop you from suing, but it's likely a waste of money. Kenneth decided not to pursue the lawsuit based on this advice. Eventually, he came to me, defeated. I don't know what I was thinking. I overlooked how important you were even after 8 years together. I promise this time, I'll make you happy and won't be distracted by anyone else, he pleaded. Naturally, his plea over the phone didn't sway me. My response was resolute. I refuse. Why? After all this begging, I realized over these 8 years that you are a terrible person. You try to blame everything on me and take what's mine, then shamelessly come back after losing it all. What benefit would there be for me to reunite with someone so selfish? Kenneth protested. You don't have to put it that way. You once said the same things to me. Anyway, never contact me again, I said firmly, though given your situation, I doubt you can. I hung up, deleted all his contact information, and changed my phone number. However, a few days later, something unexpected happened. Your ex-husband came to the house the other day, one of the neighbors said. We had to chase him away after he caused a commotion. What was he thinking? I asked, astonished. The neighborhood ladies who were aware of the situation pretended to call the police to drive him away. Since then, I haven't seen him. I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but I'm confident he isn't leading a happy life.